My name's Sasha Pete, and I'm joined by a fantastic individual, none other than the great Donnie Maclaren. Welcome, Donnie, to this conversation. Thank you.
Hi, Sasha. How you doing? Look forward to the chat.
Brilliant, brilliant. And so, Donnie, you've created a football family. So most people would know Jamie currently playing for the Socceroos, but you were a footballer once yourself. Please tell us, how did you fall in love with our great game?
Well, again, like any Scottish kid or kid from the UK, you end up playing football with your mates at school. And my brother, he also played. So there was always a ball in the back garden, and playing for schools, under 12, under 13, under 14. And then you progress to, I was like a lot of kids who become professionals. You're a schoolboy star, as they call you. And you end up playing for your country at under 15. And then obviously the next step is to go on to be a professional. And I had various clubs interested in my services when I was a kid. Celtic, Leeds, Rangers, Hibs, Hearts. Um, I ended up at Hearts probably because my old man was a Hearts supporter through and through, and I thought, I'll go there first, and I won't be there long. I'll get a transfer to Liverpool or Manchester United. Like every kid dreams of doing those kind of things, but it's not that easy when you become a professional.
So
So that's where it first started.
the so the what was your first junior club? Obviously, you signed for Hearts. How old were you when you ended up signing for Hearts?
So I was just short of 16, and my previous club was a team called Hutchison Vale, which eventually became a team called Tartan Boys Club, and they had a lot of good players, who played for Tartan. John Collins is a famous Hibernian and Celtic player who played for the High Bees. The school I went to was Ball Green as a primary school, and it produced a couple of very, very good players in Sandy Jardine, who played for Rangers in Scotland, and Gary Mackay, who also played for Hearts in Scotland. So, there's a bit of a footballing background to the school and also the area where I came from. My brother obviously was a professional football player. After I signed for Hearts, he signed for Rangers, and then our journey sort of diverged. He went to England to play for Shrewsbury, Swindon Town, Derby County, and then he went into coaching and such like.
It's interesting. So the football starts at the home. I mean, you had obviously the two twins that compete. So what was the age difference between you and your brother?
3 years.
Older or younger?
So he's my young brother. So he was always trying to come with me and play with my mates, and I'm saying, "No, go and play with your own mates." But he was a big boy. Ross was when he was 16, he was about 6'2", so he was a big unit.
Wow.
And he had a great career.
Interesting. I find that with the coaching, it's the younger ones who see the older brother and try and compete to that level, and their development sort of comes. Did you find that maybe your brother developed a bit quicker because he was trying to compete with you and your mates?
Yeah, well, again, he was always trying to catch up, but he was a defender first and foremost. So, and I was more of an attacking kind of player. But yeah, no, he was a very good kid who again signed for Rangers, and you don't get any bigger in Scotland than Glasgow Rangers.
Yeah.
And he was there for about 2 or 3 years. I don't think he played in the first team in a league game. I think he played a couple of friendly games, but eventually he was released and he went to Shrewsbury in England.
Yeah.
And off he went from there.
And so this is when we're talking about, let's say, when people say, not like today where you have like 8, 10 players on the bench, right? This is like back in the day where there was one substitute. So if you
maybe two, that was
or
about
two,
it.
all right. So, but the point being is the squad is the squad is the squad. You make the first 11, you're injured, you're out, and then the next bloke comes in, and it'll be like 6 months later you'll get your spot back, right? So competition's very tough. Growing up, is like early 70s, mid 70s, it's tough. So you said that as a junior, you gravitated more to the front of the pitch. Where did you feel most natural growing up as a schoolboy?
Anywhere along the front line, front three, I could play through the middle, left. I'm 2-footed, so left or right, didn't really bother me. I just like to score goals, obviously, like most kids do. That's what you always want to do. And it was nothing better than playing on a soccer pitch that had nets.
But you didn't have to go fetch the ball. And so,
Ball, that's it.
what would you say that early on in your career was your natural? What were your X factors that gave you that edge to then make you be able to come and sign pro papers later on?
Look, I was probably I was very, very quick, over 10 or 15 yards, and I had two good feet. Wasn't very good in the air, but if I had to, I could stick my head on it. But no, I was very, very intuition into movement, where I should be. And Jimmy's very similar in many, many respects. Although, from a goal scoring point of view, he leaves me for dead.
But I mean, so it was that nous of you scoring that obviously played you in that front line to be able to sign your first contract at Heart. How old are you talking about now? You signed your first contract?
I just turned 16, so
Wow.
my first game for Hearts was actually against Celtic reserves at Parkhead, and I was still 15. I was about 4 or 5 days short of 16, and
Wow.
so I'm playing up front against two Celtic legends. One was about to become a legend, and Roy Aitken, and one was a guy called George Connolly, who was coming back from an injury, and he'd played for Celtic for many years and Scotland. So I was playing against, I supported Celtic, so I was playing against a hero, and we beat them 2-1 that day from memory. I didn't score, but I think I made a goal.
And when was it? So that was that playing in the twos?
That was in the reserves, yeah. I didn't play in the first team of Hearts, and only played about four first team games for Hearts. That was probably 3 years later. But it's as you say, it's very, very competitive, dog eat dog, and it's you got to be on your toes every training session, every game. They're no different now, but there's just bigger squads these days. That's all.
But a great apprenticeship. So it's like that the first couple of years where let's be honest, you're still a baby. Like in consider, like now you say you signed at just shy of your 16th birthday and you're there for 3 years. So it's 16, 17, 18, right?
Yep.
Playing within a professional club.
Oh yeah, it was fantastic. You don't really know what goes on in football clubs until you become a professional, and you see how hard players do it. They play injured sometimes, because they know they don't want to be out of the team, and you just got to get through the pain barrier, and obviously sports science has moved on leaps and bounds since back in the day. I mean, I remember one of the players, a guy called Drew Busby. Drew Busby used to have
Oh,
varicose
big
veins,
name, big name.
and he used to stick his feet in boiling hot buckets of water, which was the worst thing you could ever do. But back then, that's what he thought was going to help him, you know. And so there was a lot of things they didn't know back then from a sports science point of view that players these days they get the best recovery.
Name some of the characters that would have been there at Heart at the time. Who did everybody look up to? Who were the first team players that?
Oh well, the first team players that were there at the time, who goalkeeper was a guy called Jim Cruikshank, who played for Scotland many, 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 many times. Donald Ford, who was a striker who went to the World Cup in the Scotland squad in '74. Bobby Prentice, Jimmy Cant was a fantastic football player for Hearts. Eddie Thompson had left probably 2 seasons before to come to Australia. So,
Okay.
so Tomo, that was where the Hearts connection sort of first started for Australia, if you like, because you had Eddie Thompson going to Australia, followed by John Stevenson, followed by Jimmy Cant, followed by myself, followed by a guy called Willie Murray, who ended up playing at Hibs, but ended up at Sydney City as well. So a lot of Edinburgh connections moved to Australia.
And so, did Eddie play in the first team there at Heart, or?
Eddie Thompson was the captain of Hearts.
Yeah,
Eddie
there you
Thompson,
go.
he
Obviously, massive
was.
contribution to Australian football.
Yeah, Tomo was he was a tough as nails defender, good guy. And again, the legacy he built and left. God rest his soul. He was a great guy and a great player.
And so, in and around you're 18 or so, and you get a call to go to United States. Walk me through. Is that right?
Well, what happened was the manager who signed me got the sack, a guy called John Haggart. And then we got a new manager called Willie Ormond, who, and every player will tell you this. Managers walk in, they see the team, they see the squad, and some they like, some they don't. I was one he didn't like. So that season, I was finished. I was released from my contract, and I had a couple of options to go to Wigan Athletic in England, Hibs or Dundee. But I got a phone call from a mate who was living in Washington, D.C., and he said, look, I've got a contact out here. I think I can get you fixed up in Washington. Do you fancy it? So I jumped on a plane, went to Washington, didn't get fixed up for Washington Diplomats, but ended up signing for a team in New York. And they were coached by, believe it or not, a guy called Dragoslav Šekalaric at the time. And Drago was a Yugoslavian legend who eventually came to Australia at one stage.
Yeah.
And,
So Šekalaric obviously played for Red Star Belgrade and the Yugoslav first team. Yeah. So arguably at that time, one of their biggest players. It's sort of like saying like what Modric is now for Croatia, Šekalaric was for the Yugoslav national team. So his English was very poor. What was it like being coached by Shecky in the USA?
It was broken English, and but I was a fairly good player amongst the squad that he had, so he liked me, he took to me, so we had a lot of good banter. But let me tell you a story. Once we were playing against a team called New Jersey Americans, and they had two superstars who were well past their prime at the time. One was Eusebio, and one was a guy called Tony Simones. And I watched Eusebio walk the length of the pitch to shake Shecky's hand.
Wow.
And I just went, that's how good this guy must have been. Because back in those days, there was no YouTube. You couldn't really see clips of Šekalaric and what he did. So it was all about reputation on people telling you how good he was. But as I say, I saw Eusebio walk before the game the length of the pitch to shake his hand and give him a cuddle.
Yes, obviously everybody would know who Eusebio is. Maybe not Dragan Šekalaric, but and I think he was commonly known as Shecky's nickname.
Yeah, he was a character. He was bigger. He was larger than life.
But only a very small man. I mean, he's tiny as in terms of stature. He must have been. Small. He must have been like a little Messi,
He was. He was very powerful. Powerful legs. Powerful top torso, and even at that stage, I couldn't tell you what age he was. He would have been maybe 50, if that. But he was still very fit and used to train, and used to kick the defenders. It was quite funny, but he was a good guy.
Kick the defenders.
Oh man, he was, but we got on famously, and I remember I was at the old Middle Park one day when he first came out, and it was a double header game, and Footscray JUST were playing, I think, South Melbourne, and John's Cross were playing Heidelberg, and he was there to watch the game. He just arrived, and he saw me, and he came across and with a kiss and a cuddle, and it was a good moment. He's a good lad.
It's great how football brings people together, and you remember, and you have that continuing friendship. It's interesting. So you stayed. Did you stay there for about a season in America? And
I played one season in America, and then I came back to Dunfermline Athletic for one season, and then I got one of the guys who played with me at Dunfermline was a guy called Alec Robertson. Now Alec Robertson, his grandson's now just broke into the Socceroos, young Alec Robertson. So I played with his granddad, and Alex has gone down. I'm off to Australia, and I'm going to catch up with Tomo and this, that, and the other. So hopefully, maybe one day I'll see you in Australia. And obviously, getting to Jimmy Cant. And then what happened was, the season finished. I got a phone call to say, do you fancy coming out? The National League's about to start. And I thought, why not? So off I went to Australia.
So did you have options on where to go, or did you just want to pick the coldest part in Australia, other than maybe, let's say, Launceston? So
Yeah. Well, believe it or not, I've mates in both Sydney and Melbourne. But Jimmy Cant's the guy who was sort of instigating the move, and Charlie Perkins was the president. And Charlie Perkins, God bless him, he was a fantastic individual. And it was my first interaction when I first came to Australia. I'd never seen an Aboriginal in my life, And Charlie was the president. He was a fantastic guy who had an unbelievable affinity with Scotchmen. So Jimmy Can convinced me to come to Canberra, and that's where I ended up. And Canberra, you're right, it's a cold place, but it was the start of something big. And Canberra at the time was a good city to become accustomed to Australia, the values, and all the things that go on.
And so talk to me. There's been a number of famous Canberrans that played for the country. So who was involved in Canberra? This is the second or third season.
1980. Yep. So the team. So one of the most famous players, probably the first Aboriginal to play for Australia, was Harry Williams.
Harry Williams, yeah.
So Harry was the left back. Unfortunately, Harry, by that time, his body had started to give up on him, and he had a lot of injuries. But you could tell he was a fantastic football player. We had Terry Bunn, we had Steve Hazowski in goals, a couple of young boys who were breaking into the Australian under-17s, Milo Milovanovic, Danny Mullis, Stephen Hogg.
Danny Mullis ended up being an administrator for the various federations, and very successful businessman after his Socceroos. I think he got a cap or two. Yeah, there you go.
That's right. And Mike Milovanovic eventually ended up being a fantastic coach of the AIS with Steve O'Connor. He's coached basically all around the world, and I saw him recently in Queensland, and he's still coaching. So I'm trying to think who else played in Canberra at the time. So there was Harry. Then there was obviously the O'Shea brothers, Tony Brennan. Then there was a couple of Scottish guys who were brought out by George Murray, Ian Gibson, Ian Purdy, a couple of fantastic football players.
And coached by?
So we had a couple of coaches. So a guy called Vic Fernandez took over from Johnny Warren. And Vic, God bless his cotton socks, wasn't really a very good coach, but was a fantastic football player. And he was superseded by George Murray, who was superseded by Ati Abonyi. And then what happened? Then we got Roy Collins, who's an English guy from, I think he was coaching Sydney Olympic or Marconi. And again, players will tell you coaches come, coaches go, and some coaches don't like various kind of players. He didn't like Scotsmen, so I was on my bike again. And
so this is how many coaches? So you've rattled off a number of Socceroos, boys that played in that 74 pre-74 World Cup. So Ati Abonyi just recently passed. Johnny Warren.
Yep.
It's been a number of years, but so they both obviously played in that 74 World Cup campaign.
Yep.
So how many years were you in Canberra?
Well, I played in the National League for Canberra for about six years.
Yep.
And over that time, so we had Vic Fernandez, and then when Vic got the sack, we had a guy called Roy Thompson for a short period. Roy was then followed by a Scotsman called George Murray. George was there for a couple of years, eventually got the sack and was replaced by Ati Abonyi. And Ati eventually left and was replaced by Roy Collins. And I didn't get to play under Roy Collins because, we didn't see eye to eye on a couple of things. And I left to come to Melbourne and sign for George Cross, where I spent a further 6 years playing in the old National League.
National League. And so what was Canberra during that time, were you seen as a a battler club, or where did you typically finish? Mid-table? Where was the greatest achievement of that Canberra? So you're talking late 70s, early 80s now.
Correct. Yeah, look, I think if you look at the Canberra team at the time, it was a team full of some very, very good individuals. From a team perspective, it just no one could really pull us together and get us to do anything of note. I mean, we'd always go to Marconi and Sydney City and beat them, but then you play Blacktown and get beat. You know,
Uh-huh.
with no disrespect to Blacktown. So we
I
beat
mean,
the big team.
it's often the way, right? It's often the way you play a like of Marconi and you lift, and then you're expected to beat, let's say, for example, a Blacktown and you lose.
That's right.
Yeah, it's
So
the lift.
basically we underachieved at Canberra, I would say. Back in those days, this is before the Canberra Cannons came into the basketball league, before the Canberra Raiders came into the rugby league. So we get about 10 to 12,000 people at
How
Bruce
good's
Stadium,
that?
which was a great facility.
It's bigger than what crowds are getting today, 10, 12,000. So you feel like you're playing for a proper football club. And was that your only job, or did you have to work during the day?
No, you had to work during the day. So believe it or not, work for the public service in Canberra, as most people do. But for the first couple of years, me and a guy called Jimmy Cant, who eventually left to go to Marconi in Sydney City, played for the Socceroos on many occasions. We were actually lifeguards at the Olympic pool. So this is before the AIS was built. So we were lifeguards in the morning and football players in the afternoon.
That sounds like a tough life.
Getting paid to get suntan. It wasn't bad.
Sounds like a tough life. So tell me, did you're off to George Cross? Do you remember, like, what year is this? Is this like mid 80s now? Is it 86,
86, 87-ish, yeah, roughly.
87? So this is at a time where you're out in sunshine.
Correct.
Chaplain Reserve, and the very passionate people, the Maltese.
They love the football. They love the football, and if you look at all the clubs back then, I think it was about six Victorian teams in the National League: Heidelberg, us, Green Gully, Ellis, Footscray, JUST. Good local derbies you'd pull in. Well, I mean, Ellis versus Heidelberg, there'd be 20,000 people in Middle Park.
Yeah.
And if we played on a Saturday, that game was on a Sunday, every player in Melbourne would go to watch the game because the atmosphere was great and the football was good. But our Chaplain Reserve, so Billy Wilkinson was the first coach. Now let me just take that back. Tommy Traynor, there's another Scottish connection with Hearts in Scotland. So Tommy Traynor was a Hearts legend who was coaching George Cross at the time.
Yeah.
And Tommy was unfortunately sacked, followed by Billy Wilkinson, followed by John Gardner, followed by Ernie Merrick.
So how many seasons are you now at George Cross?
So Ernie Merrick came on my 6th season, would have been coming into the 7th season. And Ernie, God bless his cotton socks, got rid of me.
So where would you say the culture at George Cross? A lot of British boys in that side, sort of mid 80s. So everybody would have enjoyed a pint after the game. Is that fair to say?
So we used to call ourselves the Black Swan. And there was me, Chris Taylor, Jeff Faulkner, Sean Parton, Lou Kastner. Jimmy Rooney was the assistant coach for most of those years when Johnny Gardner was there. And you talk about, Australian talent. I was lucky enough to play with and witness three unbelievable talents: Andrew Marth, Paul Trimboli, and John Markowski. For young 16-year-old kids who came into our squad. And, Jonesy, I mean, if agents had been as prevalent back then, Jonesy would have played for Real Madrid. I have got no doubt What a talent.
Yeah.
What a talent.
So this is now my neck of the woods. So he grew up as a Sunshine Heights junior, and then obviously Chaplin. The distance between Sunshine Heights and Chaplin Reserve is only a couple of kilometres.
Yeah, that's right.
And what a big man at 16 and a half or whatever. He was bigger than most adults.
Oh, mate, I remember his first training session. He got the ball on the halfway line and he chipped Lou Castro, the goalkeeper. And Lou's looked at me and I've looked at Lou, and Lou's went, "Do you reckon he meant that?" And I said, "Lou, oh, without a doubt, mate. Without a doubt." You know, he was a machine, the boy. You know, he was a great player. And you know, Paul Tremboli. Paul Tremboli was Australia's Kenny Dalglish. It's just a pity he didn't have that extra yard of pace, because he too had a fantastic football brain. And Andrew Marth, Stabber Marth was, you know, man, defenders. I mean, let me make a comment. There's a lot of players who played in the old National League who would be superstars in the A-League. And there's a lot of A-League players who wouldn't get a game in the old National League, in my opinion. And again, football's all about opinions. But, you know, and it's hard to compare then with now.
Look, the eras are hard to compare, Donnie, in that football's become quicker now, right? So you need to be an athlete. Back then, I think we valued the X factor. So you think about Paul Trimboli's ability to turn on a dime, right? And he had to account with, you know, the likes of, you know, and a Sean Parton on the opposition, kicking the life out of him, right? And what would happen behind play in the mid-'80s would not be tolerated today. You'd get half a season, right?
That's right.
With slide tackles and, you know, like, how did you deal with football being so aggressive? Like, there's no way the modern player could, if that you zap them back, you know, into, let's say, 1986, right? So it's 40 years now. Let's say you zap somebody back to 1983 and the tackles that would fly in 2023, 1983. I don't think anybody would cope, because it'd be two-footed double studs at your knee would be common.
Yeah, that's spot on. You know, I mean, it was a tough game. You have to be able to look after yourself, you know. When you think about let's talk about some of the forwards that used to beat up the defenders. Big Cozzy and Marshall Soper, you know, they used to dish it out as well as give it, you know. So it was a tough game, but you know, the referees could only do what the referees could do, and the game changed for the better. However, you know, I think everybody these days is sick of seeing players rolling about when no one's touched them. You know, we don't need to see that, you know.
Yeah. So definitely, and obviously now they play on carpet. Back then, Chaplin Reserve. I mean, Chaplin Reserve held up always pre-season. It was beautiful, right? It was the problem was the end of the game. End of the year became that slosh pit, right? Because you would train on the same ground, play on the same ground. And by the following year, they're able to get the grass would grow back quite well. But I remember some games watching in the mid-'80s on Chaplin Reserve, sitting on the pole there against, let's say, for example, South Melbourne, George Cross, watching you play, and the likes of, you know, Chris Taylor and some of the names that you mentioned. It would be a mud pit. It would literally be a slosh pit, and game would be played. There's no way an A-League game would be played on that pitch. It would be deemed unsuitable.
Unsuitable, correct, spot on. I mean, you know, we couldn't wait to play on Olympic Park or go to Marconi or, you know, Sydney City, who had good pitches. But again, you know, that's the beauty of the game evolving. You know, they're playing on, the players are getting looked after better in many respects, and playing on a decent pitch, you know, it's fantastic.
So who was the biggest drinker? So who was?
Oh, geez, you know, you're asking for some secrets. The Black Swan, the biggest drinker. That'd probably be me, Jeff Faulkner, Sean Parton.
And what percentage of your wage would you leave of let's say a Thursday night when you get paid back over the bar? That's what we want to know, Donnie.
You'd only spend about $20. You'd only spend about $20.
Okay. All
You
right.
know,
So the beers were cheap, right? So
the beers were cheap, and the supporters were very very gracious and always buying us beers and looking after us, so we couldn't complain.
but obviously this is what builds team culture, right? Maybe it doesn't happen there, but that was normal, right? You trained together, you were mates together, you had a beer together.
Yeah, I mean, one thing about George Cross was that the boys were very, very close knit. And look, it's very unusual to get teams that are not close knit, unless you have a couple of bad apples in the dressing room, which does happen from now to now. But you think back then, you look at Brunswick Juventus, Brian Brown, Gary McDowell, Eddie Campbell, Robbie Cullen, they had a good team spirit. Same as the guys at Heidelberg, Stuart Stevenson, Donny McLeod, Mickey Valentine, they good bunch of boys. So every team had a good core unit that would help them out off and on the pitch.
And if you had to wind back, let's say, for example, give me one game that you played for Canberra and one game that you played for George Cross, because you spent 6 years at Canberra and 6 years
Yep.
at George Cross. So you'd relive. Now it might be a memorable one. First, let's go to Canberra. Walk me through who you played, why was it memorable, and if you could replay that 90 or 95 minutes, why?
One that springs to mind in Canberra was the Wednesday night game, and we had at the time a guy called Ian Callaghan. Ian Callaghan played for Liverpool in England, and he was a guest player, and this was his last game. And I used to wear number 7, and he was wearing number 17. And we're beating Marconi. We're playing him off the pitch, beating him 1-0 with about 10 minutes to go. And Vic Fernandez decides to make a substitution. And Callie's standing next to me and he goes, Donny, I can't believe he's taking you off. And I've said, Callie, you better have a look again, mate, because it's not me, it's you. So, but we've got 10 minutes to go. We're 1-0 up at Bosley Park against Marconi. And Marconi were a team and a half, let me tell you. Vieira, Pascalo, Henderson, Shan, Krančević, Jankovic. What a team. And he took Ian Callaghan off.
You've almost named nearly every name that you named were Socceroos there, right?
Right.
So
some great football players. We got beat 2-1.
oh, wow, he took him off and you got beat 2-1.
We got beat 2-1.
Because of the substitution or just created team balance or?
Well, he just took off a player who was making things happen and just upset the whole rhythm of the team. And he thought he would do the right thing and take him off and let him have the adulation of the Marconi crowd.
Of the club.
But it was a bad decision, So hopefully Vic learned from that. But anyway, the following day, Callie was off back to England and with a few drinks that night. But yeah, that was one game I'd like to replay and not make that substitution.
Okay, all right.
I would have been happy to have gone off for Ian Callaghan because what a player and what a gentleman he was.
And the if you had to replay one memorable game for George Cross, walk me through a memory.
Oh, there was a game once where we had to. So it was the last game of the season, and we had to beat West Adelaide at Chaplin Reserve, and John Markowski scored 2 of the best goals you'll ever see. One with his left and one with his right. We beat them 3-1. And so we scored first, they equalised, and then Jonesy just decided to do something special twice. And that was a great game. Great atmosphere. And of course we avoided relegation. Every year we were fighting relegation at George Cross, it was incredible.
So you had to win that game to avoid relegation.
To win that game to stay in the National League.
And so it was this. How old is this in Jonesy's first year or second or?
I'm going to say it was probably Jonesy's second year.
Yeah.
But Chris Taylor would have been playing, me, Roger Bain, Sean Parton, Stevie Richardson. And Jonesy pulled out 2 absolute screamers. And that was a great game. Good memories.
And plenty of celebrations that night.
had a few beers that night, yeah.
The who did you room with? So back then, when you needed to travel, right? There's no way they would have put you up in a room by yourself.
No,
So talk to me. Who did you room with over the journey?
so it would either be Lou Cashner or Sean Parton. That was the partners in crime. And
Was
lots of
your room
lots
a
of.
quiet one?
I wouldn't say quiet. No. He was a school teacher, Sean Parton, so now and again he was fairly sensible.
Okay.
But
And
I'll tell you a funny story. So Vic Fernandez used to say when we went away for overnight games, say to Adelaide, and he said, if I catch you drinking, I'll put you in a plane, send you straight back to Canberra. So on the Saturday night, the boys would obviously smuggle a few beers into the rooms. And what we used to do is we used to leave the empty bottles outside a guy's room called Louis, what was his name? Louis Azevedo, I think his name was.
what are
Who
the
was
players?
one of the players, yeah, who was an Argentinian like Vic, who didn't drink, right? But we leave the empties outside Louis' room. So was,
Any comments from the management?
no, he just used to shake his head.
This was obviously of the night after the game or the night before.
The night before the game. So you'd have your team dinner, and don't forget, part-time football, you got all these guys who are bricklayers or carpenters, they're doing some hard yards. I mean, and the last thing they want to think about is not having a beer, you know. So they've done a hard yards or a hard day on the building site, you know.
So we're talking about one or two, or is it was at 10?
Oh no, one or two, yeah, one
One
or
or
two.
two. Yeah, these are just to relax.
Yeah, we're very grateful George Best ever played for us.
Yes, yes. So the quote where he said, "I gave up drinking women was the worst 20 minutes of my life."
What a player! What a player!
He spent some time. He spent some time as a guest player. I think out at Brisbane.
Yeah, Brisbane. I think he's played in Adelaide. He played a couple of friendly games for them, and as a guest. And again, I've been lucky enough to meet George Best. I've seen him play when he was at his peak as a kid, and any kid watching the game now, that's what I always say to people at work who got kids who are playing. Get them to watch George Best. He could play.
The So we're now sort of over a decade in the NSL. 6 years in George Cross, 6 years at Canberra City.
Yep.
So towards the end of your career, where are you on the pitch?
So I'm in midfield. I'm playing basically number 10, and I was sort of an attacking player who really didn't like to defend because I thought we had enough defenders. John Gardner, for example, he was a very, very, very good coach technically, but he was also structured these teams defensively, which didn't sit well with me. And we used to have, me and Jimmy Rooney used to have lots of conversations about the formation, the tactics. But Jimmy used to say to me, "Get the ball, dribble, score a goal, and that'll keep them all quiet." There's enough defenders in this team. Try and score some goals. And of course, we had some good players. We had Robbie Markovac was on the wing. We had Gary Clark who came out from Scotland. Cal Gilder, who wasn't notoriously a good goal scorer, but was a good target man. So we'd always have a lot of good combination play going off Cal. And so I was a number 10 towards the last couple of years at George Cross. And I scored the occasional goal. Not as many as I should have.
Would you play with three up front, or typically would it be still the 4-4-2, the traditional 4-4-2, or would you play the 4-3-3? What would be the shape of the team?
Johnny Gardner preferred to play 4-3-3, and we also had Noel Minton at the time, who was a bit of a Noel was a great player in his day, but again towards the end, lost a bit of pace. I was getting on myself, so I wasn't as fast as I used to be. Jeff Faulkner, who played in midfield, was a great football player. very unheralded football player. But we tried not to lose goals, which was John's modus operandi, which didn't sit well with me, because you got to score goals to win games.
Yeah. So after George Cross, walk me through what happens.
So the story about how I ended up coaching, I was coming back for injury once, and so was Kenny Murphy. So it's George Cross versus South Melbourne Hellas in Middle Park, and we're playing the reserves. And I'm chasing Murph. He's got the ball. He's about 35 yards out, and I couldn't catch him, but I kept shouting, "Shoot, shoot, right, shoot, you old bugger!" And he did. And he put it in the top corner, and he turned around and he said, "You'd be a good coach, Donny." Anyway, a couple of years later, Murph got his first coaching job, which was at Faulkner, and he rang me up and said, "Let's catch up for a beer. How do you fancy being my assistant?" So I was Kenny Murphy's assistant at Faulkner for a season, and I think it was 2 seasons actually. And we got them to the grand final. Got beat by Bulleen at Middle Park. Bit unlucky. And then I had twins. I had a daughter first, obviously. Then I had twins, and the Sunbury job came up. It was close to home. It just made it so much easier from a family perspective to get involved, which was probably the worst decision I ever made, because, as I say, 3 games into the season, I was player coach at Sunbury. I snapped my Achilles, and that was me finished after that.
A painful injury, the Achilles, isn't it?
Oh, mate, I thought I'd been shot, and it was, back in those days they used to stitch you up, and then they'd put staples in your calf. And let me tell you, the most painful thing I've ever had is those staples being pulled out 8 months later. So that finished me as a player.
As a player.
As a player, yeah. And I think I coached. I played at Thomastown with Kenny Murphy as well, before Murph went into coaching. Chris Taylor also played at Thomastown, Dean Hennessy, Peter Cocker. So I had a season there at Thomastown in the old NPL before it was called the NPL. Then I coached Sunbury. Then I retired, gave it up, and didn't get involved until the twins started to want to play football. And, with all due respect to a lot of dads who become coaches, they're not really football orientated. They're Aussie dads who watch Aussie rules, but the kid wants to play soccer, and they haven't really got a clue. So I had to get involved. It worked out okay. I was at Gully for a couple of years, and, we won the Super League many, many seasons in a row. I had about, at one stage, 9 kids in the Vic State team. So I was very lucky with the crop of kids that I had, and they were a pleasure to coach.
Yeah. So any others? Obviously, your boy's gone on to talk about that state. Who are some of the boys that played with the twins?
That you would probably know Ricky Bean, the James Ricky Bean.
Yeah,
he plays at, I think James is at Avondale Heights these days.
He's just announced. I think he was there like 15 years, and he's just announced that they're leaving. They're there was two brothers.
That's right.
Two brothers. I think
it's James. I'll tell you a story about James. James, as a kid, was an unbelievable football player. What a lovely left foot. At 12 years of age, you looked at him and went, "This boy's going to be a player." But he always wanted to be a striker. And he was good enough to be a striker in my Green Gully junior team. But I used to say to him, "You're going to be the best left back in the league. That's where you should play and really learn to be a good left back like Roberto Carlos." Dad, I want to be a striker. So I played him as striker, and he wasn't really a good striker. He was a fantastic football player with a fantastic left foot, who eventually ended up, every coach he went to when he turned professional, if you like, put him at left back.
Yeah.
Because that's where he was suited. And he was a great left back.
There's a wisdom there for there's 11 positions. Let's say 11 positions on the pitch. You don't, when a coach says, "Listen, son, you're not a midfielder, you're a centre back, or you're not a striker, you're a centre back.
Yep.
You're not a winger, you're a fullback," right? He's seeing something in you that would suit you better, even if you can't see it yourself.
That's right. And again, it's all opinions, but sometimes the educated opinion, people need to stand back and listen, But again, everyone's got an opinion about what they feel or where they should play. And what I used to do with the kids at Green Gully, and I was lucky because really, I moved all about. I played them at striker, left back, midfield, centre back. I just swapped them around because they were all good players, but I just gave them a taste of something different every now and again. And we had a good team. One of the kids I also coached was a little kid called Luke Jago, whose brother Jimmy Jago.
Yeah, Luke Jago still play. He still play. He was playing at Green Gully this year, so played a lot. So yeah, Jimmy Jago's brother, Luke Jago. Yeah.
Right, well, Jimmy Jago is a good family friend, and he's playing at Hibs just now, and he's obviously played for the Socceroos. And I remember a story about Jimmy Jago. I used to help out George Campbell when he was doing his selections for the state squad, and I used to say to George, you haven't got Jimmy Jago on your list because I don't really, I hate to say this, but he goes, I don't think he's as good as the other guys. And I say, George, mate, what are you missing? And George Campbell knows his stuff and he's played at a high level, but he just, for some particular reason, thought other players were better than Jimmy Jago. So I kept bashing his ear, and eventually he picked the kid for the state squad, and the rest is history. Those other kids that George fancied above Jimmy Jago, they're nowhere.
Nowhere.
So, I'm not saying I'm right and he was wrong, but because it happens with players. There's some players that I maybe never fancied. That's life. That's football.
Yeah. But it's interesting being able to identify something at a kid, let's say at the 12, 13, 14, and that's the level I coach at. That's sort of that 14 to 18 mark where they're starting to become within their own. You can explain something and they can then execute.
That's right.
That formation of a senior player. Still a lot of way to go before they become a proper player, but there's the makings of something there.
That's right.
And it takes the eye to detail to know what a player can do. So so apparently both the boys are very, very talented. One's gone on to obviously be. So I don't know if he's top goal scorer of all time, but he'd be very, very close, right, of the all-time leading goal scorer in either NSL history or A-League history or both. How many goals has he got to go before he
I think from an A-League perspective, he's out in front. I think he's still behind Damien Murray by. Again, I'm not quite sure what the numbers are, but Damien Murray's still the number one leading goal scorer.
But he's on track in terms of let's say predicting the amount of years he's got left, right? He's on track to be, let's say, for example, arguably. But the other boy was also very, very talented.
So it's always when you have twins, So Jamie's the youngest twin by 3 minutes, and so his older brother Donald, who was a fantastic football player, and people say to me sometimes, "Oh, can you describe who he was like?" And the only player I can really think about, and nobody in Australia will probably know this player, but you might. The guy called Jerry Daly used to play for Manchester United. Okay. Jerry Daly was a fantastic football player. Played for Ireland and Man United for many years. That's who Donny was like. Technically, well, he was very, very small in stature. So he was very small, not much of him. Skill, touch, vision, knowledge of the game. Used to make players like Jamie look good. Jamie scored 6 goals. People would say, "Oh, that boy Jamie, what a player!" And I'd go, "Mate, did you see who made them?" And they go, "Well, how do you mean?" I go, "The little skinny kid, mate. He put him on a plate for him." And again, so different players have different attributes at various ages. So Donny always used to get overlooked because he was small, right? Until he got picked for the Victorian State squad, went to Coffs Harbour, and then eventually ended up at Richmond. So I was coaching him at Richmond with a guy called Jim Maclaren. We had the 21s. And John Van Skip's boy, David, was in the first team at Richmond. Also played in the reserves now and again. And John Van Skip liked what he saw. So he invited Donald for a trial at Melbourne Heart, as it was back then. So I went to watch this. It was an intra-club game at the old La Trobe University. And I rang my mate Jim McLean. I said, Jimmy, Donny's playing tomorrow in a club game for Melbourne Heart. Do you want to come along? So we went along and watched the game. So John Van Skip, the kid was only about 15 at the time, I think, from memory. And he's put him in the first team with Wayne Shroy, Colosimo. Put him in the middle of midfield with these guys playing against the reserves. And after about 4 or 5 minutes, he's pulled this ball out there, shimmied, played a through ball, and they've scored. And Jimmy McLean's looked at me and he went, mate, they'll sign him in a heartbeat. And they were going to sign him as a professional. But then he got a thing called a stress fracture of his back. And it happens with a lot of adolescents who grow fairly quickly. They have a growing spurt. And the stress fracture of his back, which eventually healed, but it caused him a problem when he played. And he didn't want to keep on taking painkillers. And he didn't want to have an operation, you know. And eventually at 18, he just hung his boots up because that's the way it turned out, you know, which is a great shame because I've got no doubt that he would have also been a professional and done well. I'm not saying he would have played for the Socceroos, but he would have went close.
Interesting. Obviously, you took like the DNA of your family. You've got both sons and daughters and daughters-in-law. Your daughter is also involved at a professional football club.
So yeah, my daughter Stephanie. It's an interesting story because so her married name's Condello, right? So she married an Italian kid, so she's called Stephanie Condello, and she was headhunted by the CEO of Melbourne Victory for a marketing position once. And the week before, this is probably the week before, Jamie had just won his first cap for the Socceroos against England at Sunderland, and Fox Sports did a 1-hour documentary on Jamie and his journey, and I was in it, and wife was in it, Stephanie was in it, talking about kids growing up and how she used to be the goalkeeper down the backyard, etc., etc. So she's having this interview for a job at Melbourne Victory for a marketing position, and the guy's looking at the name and he's going, Stephanie Condello. He goes, but your face is very familiar. So after about 4 or 5 times, he stopped the interview and said, I know you from somewhere. She sort of confessed. She goes, look, Condello's my married name, but my name's Maclaren. Straight away, that was it, you know. So you got the job. Jamie always kids are on. You only got the job because you're a Maclaren. And she did some hard yards at university to get a marketing degree in. She's worked for Melbourne Football Club in the Aussie Rules marketing area, and now she's been in Melbourne Victory for 5 or 6 years. I think she's been there now.
Brilliant. It's beautiful that football can, you talk about names and people that you've mixed with, and that football can be the fabric at which we interact with and build friendships on, and then
Correct.
Make a living off. So I think it's a beautiful thing.
That's right. I mean, and look, the first day she's walked into the job at Melbourne Victory, Kevin Muskie was a junior at George Cross when I was there. Paul Trimboli was a football operations manager. So, and all the players who played at Victory knew Jamie. So straight away, there was a connection between her and the team and this coaching staff. So, she used to sit in team meetings, and she used to wind Muskie up, and some good stories.
Fantastic. You're talking about, obviously you would have been able to advise as a parent, having a Socceroo, a very successful one. I mean, your boy went overseas and trialed and would have had the tribulations of being in, being out.
Yep.
And you would have been able to advise, but now you would have had your own, journey through that professional career.
Sure.
But if you could give, let's say, one piece of advice for that player or trying to break into the first team or just being there or thereabouts, but they haven't solidified their position, what piece of advice would you give to that young aspiring player looking to make it, regardless of the level it is, whether it's, pro or playing in the state leagues, but now trying to solidify their position? What advice do you have for them?
Look, the only thing I would say to any kid who wants to be a professional football player is you gotta master the ball. That's the key. The ball. You guys like Maradona and Messi, they're geniuses, but they've spent that much time, mastering the ball. So if you can got a left foot and a right foot, good first touch. You're not looking at the ball when you control it. Get your head up. So it's all about practice. Anybody can get you fit. Getting fit's the easiest thing in the world. These coaches that talk about, we're fit, we're this. That's easy. That's the easy part. It's when they get the ball, what can they do? What can they see? So the advice is practice, practice, practice. And I was very lucky in that, where I lived when the kids were young, we had a football pitch in my back garden with real goals. So we spent hours, quality time with me and my kids just playing football. And the good thing was they loved it. So I didn't make them do it. They loved it. So they didn't like the bit where it was always left foot, left foot, left foot. They liked to shoot with the right foot. And I'd say, no, let's do the left foot for half an hour. So they were both two-footed. They could head the ball. They could do lots of things with them. And it's all about mastery of the ball. That's the only thing I would say to any kid. You'll get bigger. If you're small, you'll get bigger. You'll have a growing spurt, right? Some coaches might not like small players, but you'll eventually become big. But it's what you do with the ball as a kid to master it growing up. Stop playing PlayStation. Too many kids these days spend too much playing FIFA Pro, whatever it's called. Get out with the real ball, like you do in the good old days. Get dirty. Kick a ball against the wall. Keep it up for 1,000 times. It's practice, practice, practice. Simple as that. And these days, kids, if they're good and they get signed, they'll be what's the word? Not targeted. They'll be tagged as an elite player. Then they'll go into the programs, the VIS, the AIS, or the so-called academy system, and then they can always get themselves an agent, and that's the agent's job, is to then sell that particular talent, get the best deal for them, And I gave up looking after Jamie when he hit 17 or 18 because, he's over the UK. There's agents all over the place, and he's been very lucky. He's got himself a good agent who's based in Australia, but he's got some great connections overseas, and he's managed some top class players, and he's balanced in what he tells Jamie, and he can be critical, but he's negotiated some fantastic deals for Jamie, and long may that continue.
Fantastic words of wisdom, Donny Maclaren. Thank you so much for your contribution to Australian football. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope you enjoyed this conversation.
That's been great, mate. Fantastic. Keep up the good work, and it's good that other people respect what happened in the past, because it's very, very important. It's what the foundation. And one final thing I'll say is, Australian football lost out when they tried to make it the Aussie game, and they sort of disregarded the ethnics, which was a great shame. It's a pity they could have done something just a little bit better at that time, because the Hellas, the Marconis, the JUSTs, the George Crosses, the Gullies, that's what started football in this country, the migrants. And we threw it away too easily, which is a bit of a shame. Anyway, that's another conversation.
So maybe it's a good segue to the reemergence of the second division. Maybe, hopefully, in years to come, we can then talk about a true football pyramid like most other countries have with promotion and relegation. And I know it won't happen tomorrow, but I'm saying within maybe a half a generation, we can then have clubs who aspire to go up the leagues, and then teams that fail would get relegated. And so you have a true football pyramid whereby clubs can go up and down. I think that's what I would like to see as a football purist, right? Yep. And then we can have these clubs with I won't say proper football clubs, but clubs with history, right, and backing, then rise up the ranks. So there's some fantastic clubs in the old NSL that I think are worthy. One that comes to mind is Preston. They have 3,000 fans in the third tier in Melbourne. Second and third tier in Melbourne, and I'm sure they'll only, when they get into the B League, they'll have more than that. I wouldn't be surprised if they had the likes of 5 or 6 or 7,000 there at BT Connor Reserve.
Well, I mean, I've played at BT Connor Reserve for Canberra and George Cross, and I've been there, and we've been 8,000 people there.
Yeah,
and I've got some fantastic football players I've had over the years. Zakov, Georgie Campbell, Petrovsky, lots of good players. So yes, you're right. Fingers crossed.
Yes, brilliant. Donnie, thank you once again, and all the very best.
No problems. I'll talk to you soon.